You are listening to the Mohua Show, where it's all about celebrating the junoon among changemakers and their journey.
Opening up a restaurant is often described as one of the toughest businesses, really, to sustain.
I thought after talking to people, I would be 90% ready getting into the industry. To my utter shock, I don't think I was even prepared 10%. You don't realize the complexity, where there were about 80, 100 things which had to work just to give one customer, an experience when he came inside. Every day I'm getting 100 new problems. So it's like, you're on a boat with 100 holes and you're putting your leg here, you're putting your leg there, and you're just constantly sinking.
Most people think it's so glamorous, it's like great food, great vibe, great life for people. It's so glamorous, to be a restaurant owner, but nobody really talks about really what goes on behind. When you create a new restaurant, where does the idea really begin? With the food, the space, the audience, or there is a story really that. So, hi for all our listeners. On the surface, the restaurant industry really looks like a world of great food, vibrant spaces, unforgettable nights. But behind every packed table is a story of risk, resilience, and relentless problem solving, which we don't get to see. Now, what does it really take to build and sustain? Sustainability is the big thing here, and to sustain the business, a restaurant, especially in this very, very competitive and unpredictable industry. So today on the Mohua Show, we are joined by Anirudh Kheny, a restaurateur who has helped shape Bangalore's dining and nightlife culture through iconic spaces like Suzy Q and Daisy. And this conversation goes beyond food. It's about vision, leadership, and the realities of building something from ground zero. So let's get into it. Anirudh, welcome and thank you so much for taking out the time to talk to me today. Um,
Thank you, Mova, for having me on your wonderful podcast.
Thanks. So, let's just talk a little bit about the start of your career. Outside the hospitality industry, you began, right? Before entering this restaurant world, So, what inspired this whole transition, and what was the turning point that made you pursue F&B entrepreneurship in a world that's like every day there are restaurants coming up?
So I started my work career in KPMG, the Big Four consulting firm. I was doing strategy consulting from 2011 to 2016. I mean, it was a fantastic space because as a newbie, it's a space where you get to interact and work with a CXO, and that's unheard of in any other industry, right? So I love the space. A lot of problem solving. It's almost like a startup. You need to figure things out on your own. There's no one to help you. Lot of stress, lot of pressure, right? So I think those were the good learning curves for me. And after 5 years, I think I was close to feeling that I'm kind of done with this. And I was the only person who in my family, I come from a business family. I'm the only one who worked for a company. And my dad used to always say, "You're working so hard, just do something on your own." And that always played on my mind. And I was quite clear that I wanted to become an entrepreneur on my own, but not consult for businesses and rather start my own business. So my wife Neeti, she was the one who gave me, pushed me towards hospitality, and she said, seeing you and always, whenever we go out or we travel, food has always excited me, and not just in the traditional space of being vain and oh yeah, I love to go out and eat or drink. Not from that. Very curious about what kind of cuisine, what goes on in the background. So she said, worthwhile considering that you think about doing this as a career. And of course, right, did not know anything. And with my consulting background, so yeah, I quit. And then for close to year and a half, my wife and I spent a lot of time researching about the industry, trying to figure out what is it about. We met a lot of people thanks to her, because she had done a lot of work in the F&B space too as a designer. We met a lot of people, owners, consultants, and just to understand what's the industry about. And I'm a very risk and a person who looks at risk first. So I try to understand what all are the problems in the industry, how horrible is it, if I can put it in a, in a simple sentence. And my thinking was, if I'm okay to deal with the problems and the issues, and if that still excites me, then it's worthwhile getting into this, right? Yeah, so we, spend a lot of time, and yeah, after 1.5 years, we decided to get into the F&B space. So that's how I started into that.
Amazing. Opening up a restaurant is often described as one of the toughest businesses, really, to sustain. I've often thought of having a cafe and, this whole very, very
Please
idealistic
go.
situation of a cafe in a hill, go out there and there's going to be poetry. Till someone said that, on Saturdays you have to be there and on Sundays you have to be there. You have to be there even while somebody's getting married and there's like, a season that's happening. So, what are some of those biggest lessons you learned in the earlier years, of building your brand?
I thought after talking to people, I would be 90% ready getting into the industry. And in hindsight, I think, so I started in 2017, this place called 1Q1 Kitchen and Bar, which was a Japanese Peruvian restaurant. And it was 10,000 square feet. So I guess I decided to go big or go home. It was, I think, way ambitious, too ambitious for a first time restaurateur. But yeah, I was there, and to my utter shock, I don't think I was even prepared 10% after only looking at the problems before getting in, right? And I was way in over my head, and I'm like, what am I doing? I just should have been in consulting. You don't realize the complexity because there are so many departments, people interconnected. It's a big machinery, right? From outside, you just think as a customer, right? You come, you made a reservation, or you walked in, you sat, you were given a menu, you had a good meal, hopefully, you paid the bill and went. Oh my God! Like, so, I think the first time one of the shocks was when we started figuring out which cuisine and the menu and dish selection, right? So yeah, you think in your head, cool, your food should be good. You look into it, then hopefully, narrow down the process. Then it goes down to what is the cost price. Before cost price, what are the ingredients, who is your supplier, who's the backup supplier, what's the delivery quality of the person, how do you set the selling price, who's your target customer, connects to your chefs and purchase and store. And this is just one small part of it, right? So this way there were about 80 100 things which had to work just to give one customer, an experience when he came inside. And just that just blew my mind. I mean, it might sound naive now, but in my head I prepared a lot, right? And then when you're there and you start thinking, oh my God, every day I'm getting 100 new problems. So sometimes you think, am I an idiot that surely this is not that hard? And every day, Mao, I'm not exaggerating, I was learning new things. So I'm trying to learn on one side, and I'm trying to, see, oh, I learned another new problem. I'm trying to solve it. So it's like, you're on a boat with 100 holes, and you're putting your leg here, you're putting your leg there, and you're just constantly sinking. But I guess I think in that was the best thing that happened to me, because I did everything, right? I did front desk duty, I was a maintenance manager, I was a bouncer at times, taking orders. And I've never been a person who ever walks around thinking, I'm the owner. So a lot of time people didn't even know who I was. And that's how I always wanted it to be, right? Because I said, end of the day, people should come for the space and not for the not for the restaurant. And yes, I think the complexity and the sheer difficulties, I think, is the biggest challenge, and nothing can prepare you for that.
Yeah, most people think it's so glamorous, it's like great food, great vibe, great life for people. It's so glamorous, to be a restaurant owner, but nobody really talks about really what goes on behind. There's like a whole set of people that you got to manage, and every dish, and people are so quick to point out something that is not going right, and I know, I get it, Anirudh. So, let's talk a little bit about how ideas actually take shape. You've been behind several well known concepts, in Bangalore, like Suzy Q, Daisy, So when you create a new restaurant, where does the idea really begin, with the food, the space, the audience, or there is a story really that is lurking at the back of your mind and you want to take that forward?
A very pertinent question. So I think first and foremost you have to be. It's a cliche term, but I think here truly you have to be very passionate about what you want to do, because a lot of what comes out in hospitality is about the person who's driving the business, and it's a top down trickle effect, right? So your brand really needs to come out of what you truly believe. If you're half hearted in an idea or a concept, it's going to be very apparent, right? So one, you need to figure out what excites you, what type of concept that you want to do. But at the same time, you got to be a pragmatist, right? You got to be practical. It's not only about what interests me. There got to be a business sense about it as well, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a P&L and business has to work. So you look at intersection about what is a good concept. Is it going to work from a business point of view, right? So you start thinking at a high level. Then you start looking at, okay, concept one, two, three, four. A lot of times, right, you're a little excited. You think, oh, I've got a wonderful idea, and let's go ahead with this. But that's how I work with my team of, everyone's open to giving opinions in terms of whether this concept works or not. Sometimes, your ego gets hurt saying that, oh, a lot of people thought this is a crappy idea, right? But honestly, your first idea is never the best idea. A lot of iteration, discussion, then you kind of figure out a concept. But then you start going down into who's our target audience, what is the problem that we're trying to solve, who do we want to attract, because right, what you're trying to convey through your product and your target audience, the communication needs to be the same, right? If you're trying to be something and your customers understanding something else, is going to be a mismatch, right? Then you start looking at locations. You think about whether you want your product to be scalable, or is it only one outlet it's going to be, or you're going to take it into different cities. Then you start looking at into food concepts, liquor concepts, cocktail. What's the story that you want to come out through your product? And then you build the entire narrative. And I truly believe while location and concept is a chicken and egg, but the thing is, right, in a fast moving city like Bangalore, right, good locations come and go like this. So you can't find the location and then say, hey, you know what, I have a 60-day rent free period. Now I'm going to think through the entire gambit. It doesn't work, right? Or it might work, but then you're going to be paying a lot of rent before you start. So ideally, it's good to have thought a lot about your concept and keep it ready, and then when you find a space which kind of matches for that, then you go and execute. So that's ideally how we work, and it honestly is at least a 9 to 12 month process of thinking end to end to get a product which you think hopefully works.
Yeah, of course. So, once your idea is really in place, execution becomes everything, So there's F&B, which is a highly sensitive industry, right? From hygiene to supply chains to customer experience, So what are some of those non-negotiable systems that every restaurant must have today, especially given these times?
See, for a fact, FNB has a 90% failure rate, right? I mean, there's no two ways about shying away from it. It is an industry where almost every other space fails. See, I'm a very process-driven person, so I think the first and foremost is having clear processes in terms of how you want all your moving parts to come together, right? Now, just think about it, right? You're making a reservation, you're coming to the restaurant. From the restaurant point of view, right, even before you open the restaurant, you have the housekeeping team coming in many hours before cleaning and setting up the restaurant. Then you have your kitchen team coming and preparing all your mesa. You have your bar team preparing your mesa. They need to be informed about if there is any shortage of elements which come from the purchase, right? You might have issues where elements or products might not come. Then you need to know, is it going to be a busy day? Do you have a lot of reservations? Do you have any corporate parties, or is it weekend nightlife coming up? So with all of these, how do you control all of these narratives, right? Because it's a very scattered department, right? Everybody's doing their own part in silo, but you still need to bring all of this together, because if one small moving part doesn't work, the entire experience breaks away, right? So I think the non-negotiable is being very clear on your processes, defining roles and responsibilities for everybody, having clear checklists, in terms of like the manager or the operations head of what all needs to be checked, right? See, fine, I might have it in my head that I'm clear how the restaurant should run, but I have seven outlets across five brands. Everyone's not going to get the same thing, right? So how do you give your identity and your processes to everybody? Checklists, processes, I think has to happen. And just look at it, right? From a customer point of view, he might walk in a great mood. Somebody at the front desk might upset him, right? Entire mood is off. Or vice versa. He or she's had a great time. You're going out and something happened at the valet, bad experience, right? So there are so many moving parts to this, which you can kind of reduce the risk by having processes and defined KPIs and roles and responsibilities, and then you end up hopefully having a good experience with the customer.
God. It really sounds intense, Anirudh, you know.
It is, right, and you start literally from zero every day, right? Every day you start from zero. Again, customers need to come, and you can say, yeah, I'm kind of established. Boom, new place opens up. You might
Yeah.
think, oh, my customer loves my place, I'm going to come, but you don't realize, right? It's about consistency. The same customer might say, hey, I've been coming for a while, this product now or dish is going down. That means again we've done something wrong, right? So you can never ever trust me. Just be comfortable ever, right? So after a while, you just live in this as a owner, this constant level of anxiety and stress, and it just never goes away, right? So it is, but it's part of the job, it's part of the industry, and you got to deal with it.
So let's just talk about the pandemic, which really hit the hospitality industry really perhaps harder than most. That was crazy times. I mean, I don't know how we all came out of it. So alongside COVID, the world also faced geopolitical disruptions and wars that really affected the supply chain, cost and consumer behavior. So how do these global challenges really impact, your business, and how do you think, all of this, what does it require really to navigate this?
I think it's a part of life which I think I've tried to delete from my memory. Oh gosh, it was terrible. I don't. It was unprecedented, right? You've never planned for that. I don't. Nobody had ever had any contingency plans for this. So it just came and hit you in the face, to be honest. And see, F&B is always discretionary spending for people, right? It's the any problem happens immediately people stop discretionary spending. So F&B is the first industry which gets impacted, and always the last industry which recovers. So the turnaround time is just way more exponential for us compared to everybody else. Yeah, so immediately the virus started coming. Everyone's freaking out, including us, staff. We got so much of responsibilities to look at. And F&B, right, are what works for us are the space that we have. It's all fixed property, immovable, right? So you have high fixed costs, you have salaries which you have to pay, and you have all perishable products. Overnight you have so much of meat, you have so much of produce, which there's nothing much you can do. It's a lot of money which is lost, right, across outlets. And I don't blame the government, even nobody knew what was happening. So your revenues are out, your costs are going up. Yes, we all have contingency budgets kept to reserve funds, but not for the scale of this, right? And you're trying on one side to go and speak to landlords on how do you literally requesting and pleading of how can you get a rent waiver. Some were kind enough to do that, but some said, hey, I'm in an equally bad situation, I really can't help you. And then as the virus went away and people started stepping out, like I said, right, last industry to recover, there were so many guardrails put on us, only delivery, 25 people. Then slowly they got into liquor. So yeah, so it was absolutely a nightmare getting out of it. See, for us, I think we were the only one of the few people. I think we took a massive risk and said, hey, let's close 1Q1, which was a fabulously successful restaurant.
Mhm.
And we broke it down from scratch, broke it down and built it from scratch, and opened a new restaurant, Suzy Q. Because we said, either way, issues are happening, everyone's going to struggle. And let's make it way more casual and way more outdoor centric. So I think we took a challenge and tried to, make the best out of it. And see, to your other point, right? Look at like now the gas thing, right? The war,
Yes.
all of a sudden it came again, right?
Mm.
Now you cannot plan for this again, right? That's what we thought after COVID. Have we all learned? Sure, we are probably better prepared in terms of firefighting, but now from a fire hazard point of view, you cannot stock up gas cylinders.
Yeah, of course, you can't.
Right? And we all set up our restaurants with a certain identity, a certain kitchen setup, a certain menu that we're giving to customers, right? So we reduced the menu immediately. We got into electric equipment, induction, but you cannot fundamentally change the way the restaurant operates, right? So
Mm.
it was trying to balance not doing anything and just sitting versus trying and changing, but not completely giving a bad experience to the customers.
Yeah.
Right?
Tough. It's a tough rope to walk on.
Yeah, so I think during these times, it's better to try and control what you can control, and try and find a solution. And the rest, honestly, you can't do much more than that. That's
Yeah.
the learning for me over these two things.
So, which also actually brings us now to, the larger ecosystem actually around the industry, So the F&B industry employs millions, but often lacks recognition and structural support, So, what are the biggest challenges that as an entrepreneur, as a restaurateur, you feel that the industry faces today, and what needs to really change, to bring about this whole, all the people who are working, in the kitchens and all around,
So Mava is not only just the number of staff who work with us, right? It's also the ancillary staff, ancillary vendors. You look at it, right? You have your produce vendors. You have when you're setting up a restaurant, you have all your architects, designers. Uh,
Yes.
you have all kind of vendors we work with. You look at DJs, you look at artists, right? So it's a huge gambit of people, right, who come. Yeah, so that's a disappointing part because till recently or even now, F&B still thought about in archaic terms of bar owner, liquor industry. It's where people go to drink, hi-fi people go, but that's not how in the other countries, not only in the West, even in other other Asian countries, how F&B is treated, right? But giving a lot of credit, amazing point to the F&B industry is, in spite of all these challenges, just look at the number of amazing restaurants, bars, cafes, operators that we have throughout India and who've been winning awards in spite of all these challenges, right? It's sad that the economic way of F&B, the way it's been going, is not being treated by the government on that front. We have so many rules, regulations. Every state has a different rule. So literally, when I started getting into 2017, there was no handbook of what all you have to actually do to set up a restaurant, right? In terms of rules and regulations. So it's only hearsay. You're talking to people. That's not a way of how actually you need to set up a business, right? So you are literally having your arm behind your back and then trying to figure out and get into this industry and having 90% challenges, right? So just look at it from a GST point of view. We have got 5%. What we have to charge customers. We don't get any input credit. We lobbying for the longest to the government of giving us 18%, so that there's some amount of input credit which brings a little bit of balance into the business. Not much of support, but our restaurant association, NRAI, now they've been doing a fabulous job of bringing a lot of associations together, because we are very not organized in terms of, there are darshanis, there are cafes, there are hotels, there's us, right? So now they got to get everybody together and then lobby with the government of trying to get some type of support. Slowly it is changing, like with this gas crisis. The government did help and at least prioritize F&B to a certain extent. So I think in over 10 years, I think it's the first time we felt like, oh, okay, at least we've got a voice. So I'm hoping that this is the first step in terms of getting a larger credibility.
So, let's just talk about Bangalore right now, specifically. So, Bangalore has really evolved into India's, most vibrant nightlife city.
Right.
So, there's always something happening here, So, how have you seen the culture really change over the past decade in Bangalore?
I think our conversation before we started off. You've also been in Bangalore for a while, right? So if you
Yeah.
see, in the early 2000s, Bangalore was more of a discotheque city,
Yeah,
and
pubs.
pubs, right? And dancing was a big thing in Bangalore.
Yeah.
There were few food spaces which were good, but far in between, not that many, right?
Hmm.
And then over the 2010s, you can see, or mid 2010s, the lounge culture started coming where people
Hmm.
did not want to dance as such, but you're going out, you're having a good meal, the music is nice, but you're having conversations, right? So,
Yes.
and now in the last 2 to 3 years, and now, which is phenomenal of how you have different concepts for everybody, right? You want an intimate, a fancy meal in a 20-seater or 30-seater, it's there. You have on the other side 2 acre breweries which are there in Bangalore, which is crazy, which have I think 2,000, 3,000 people, food
Yeah,
for
in
all
one place.
people, families, grandparents, all
Hmm.
going out. That's
Hmm.
it. Fabulous cocktail bars. The
Hmm.
best of cocktail bars in the city, in the country, are in Bangalore. So I think the layered concepts which have come out now in Bangalore, and heading towards the Bombays and the Delhi, I think is phenomenal to see the growth. But also, there's another important point why this has happened. Now with the advent of social media, people are traveling, right? You're getting so much of
Yeah.
options. You're looking at what's happening in the rest of the world. So people want better concepts, better products. I think people are also valuing their time and money way more, and they want better concepts and that emotional experience when they go to places. So they're
Hmm.
not, agreeing and saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm just going to this place. There's a menu. I just had something and came out." Right. So I think this is where I think the industry is going to keep growing into better concepts.
So, I mean, it's interesting that you're talking about this because, today's diners are really, chasing experiences. That's what you said, right? So there are aesthetics and there's the Instagram moments, that, oh, I've been to this place and let's just get this whole Instagram, of the food. And it's so interesting when you go into a restaurant, even before they've touched their food, they're busy clicking pictures. Yeah. And I think I've also learned now after watching youngsters that you need to hold your phone like right on top to get the food picture really well. So do you really think that restaurants are becoming more about looking good than serving good food? Do you think that is a change that's happening?
So I think last couple of years, I think, or 3 years back, I think everybody, I think restaurant owners to chefs to operators, a lot of it was for the gram, right?
Yeah, the grab moment.
So the way the interiors were done, the plating was done, the food we colorful,
Mm,
and you can't blame people because finally the discovery is so high on Instagram, right? You have to cater to that. Then came creators, influencers, bloggers, right? Which again is all about content. So I think that is an important part. But if you look at it from the bigger scheme, right? It's going to take you only so much, getting the discovery, having the right
mm,
aesthetic, content. You get visibility, sure, and I think it's very very important because you have to know what's working in this day and age, right? But
mm,
more than that, finally people are going to come back for a product, a great dish, or a great service staff, or a great bar person they've had a conversation with, or a wonderful drink, or something which makes them comes back to the space, right? So I think it goes hand in hand. It'll take you only so much, but I think more than that, you have to go to certain principles of why a restaurant or a product is good. Is how
yeah.
I would answer this.
Yeah, Anirudh, we can't forget technology in today's world, especially given this space. So there's the rise of the cloud kitchens, and there's platforms like Zomato, Swiggy, and the whole world and the whole industry is kind of transformed significantly with this, right? So do you see these as an opportunity, threat, or really something that falls in between? Are restaurants really today rebuilding, building brands basically, or just feeding algorithms?
Good question again. It's always the conversation, right? The Swiggy and the Zomatos. I think to take a mature view, a practical view. They are disruptors. They are industry disruptors, not just in India, right? The equivalent also the rest of the
Hmm.
world. And
Yeah.
they have completely disrupted the industry. So you have to look at it from, there is an opportunity, but also is there a threat? right? So you have to find a balance, and you can't say I'm going to go all out on it and say, yeah, I'm going to fully survive on the aggregators. Neither can you say I absolutely detest them and they're ruining the industry. The world changes. You have to deal with it,
Yeah,
right? It's like
yeah,
AI
yeah.
right now, right? You have to live with it. There's no point fighting it, right? So I think as a restaurant owner, you have to look at what works for your brand, use it, right? Because like Instagram, again, Swiggy and Zomato is a great avenue for discovery, right? Like it or not, everybody goes on these platforms to find you either for dining or for delivery. So use it in terms of what works for you, be it sales, be it from a marketing point of view, but also you have to be cognizant to know that, hey, it's not only about discounts. Am I being irrelevant, and is everything only because someone's coming to me because I'm on a platform? What's my commission? What's my profitability on this, right? So I think you have to find a middle ground of what works for you as a brand, and then say, either I'm going to do it or I'm going to do it in this way. But there's no point getting away from it. I think you have to, and credit to them and even to us. There has been more of a closer collaboration between the restaurants and the aggregators. They are also understanding our point of view, and you got to live with it. And a known devil is better than an unknown, right?
Yeah,
Is
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And finally, what would you like to tell Anirudh for young, entrepreneurs who really want to build hospitality brands? What advice would you like to give them before they really take this plunge and leap, into this really dynamic industry that's constantly changing?
I think you really need to ask yourself why I want to get into this industry, and not just fluff, right? Honestly, a real hard question of why. Like, you rightly mentioned earlier, a lot of people get in for the glamour part, for the entertainment part. If you're getting in for that, there's no chance of success. Give up, don't even get into it. Speak to people. Speak to people. If people are nice enough, they give you your time, spend time in this space and understand the challenges, right, of how I had done in the past. Then you need to look at how passionate am I, because it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of your soul is going to go away, right? But when you finally see, it's also very rewarding. You see people coming to your space, smiling, having a great time, right? The satisfaction is amazing. So you got to realize that 90% of the time is going to be heartburn. For the 10% happiness that I'm going to get, is it worth it? Your personal life is going to go away. You have to give a lot of grit, you have to have a lot of commitment. Weekends are gone, holidays are gone, right? So you got to be, and you got to have a good support system, right? Family, partner, because unless that's stable, again, you're not going to work well, right? So you have to think of all these points and say, hey, am I still ready to get into it? And the last point, I think, the biggest point, a lot of people make mistakes are, look at the finances, look into the P&L, understand that before getting into the industry. Man, there are so many people who've gotten way in their head. They've not understood this, and then you're drowning in cash flow issues. And it's really sad when you have amazing people, enthusiastic people, and then they did not think about the finances, right? And then few months they close, and that's really heartbreaking to see. So I think these 3-4 points would be the advice that I would give.
Wonderful. So thank you so much. It's truly been insightful, and thank you for being here and sharing your journey with us. And for our listeners, if someone's looking, to build in the F&B space or any space at all, we hope that this episode gives you both clarity and courage. And I'm obviously going to really rethink about that cafe that I want to open in the hills. And if you've been, yeah.
And I'm going to take you up on your offer for the amazing Bengali food.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's absolutely on. It's going to be totally authentic Bengali food.
I look
So,
forward to it.
yeah, me too. I look forward to hosting you and your wife. So, if you've enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to follow the Mohua Show, share this episode, and let us know what your thoughts are. And if you're really opening up that restaurant, tag us. We'll come and enjoy a bite from your new place. Thank you so much, Anirudh, for taking out the
Thank
time
you
and
so
being
much
in
for
today's
having me.
episode.
It's been a pleasure.